economic development. It is a pleasure for us to have such a diverse audience amongst us who are very passionate about research and advocacy. And I hope tonight's session is going to be a very fruitful and insightful one for you, as we have two distinguished researchers who are going to present their research findings with us. Our first presenter is going to be Sheikh Zafar Imran Sir, who is a PhD candidate in the Department of Food and Resource Economics at the University of Florida, the USA. His paper is going to delve into When Monopoly Complements Monopsony, a comparison between a zero welfare revenue tariff and an optimal welfare tariff. And our second presenter is going to be Saida Fatima Tasneem, who is a research officer at RAPID. She is going to delve into and investigate the relationships between women empowerment and life satisfaction using evidence from the rural Bangladesh. So before we move on to the presenters, I would request Dean Sir to give introductory remarks and moderate the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jara, and a good evening and welcome to you all for joining us this evening. So, this monthly webinar series actually created for all the young people to showcase, to share their work, and to learn from each other, to facilitate them to network with each other. So, the one of the main objective is to disseminate the knowledge so that you know that what are the other people are doing, and so that you can also have the opportunity to share your research, or if you have any idea, you can actually connect with other people to actually writing maybe a research paper or maybe a newspaper article, something that has some academic or policy making value. So, keeping that in mind, we always try to bring people here who are young and also have some exposure already, did some research, academic research, and have some publication. So, as Jara was saying that we have two speaker today, Sheikh Jafar Imran. He is based in USA. So there is a time gap, significant time gap. So hopefully he will join us and we'll have his talk. But we have our second speaker, and we'll start with our second speaker, Fabia Tasneem. So Fabia actually did an excellent work on life satisfaction and on the measure of life satisfaction. It is his MSS dissertation, and it would be actually really helpful for her and for you also if you can give some feedback, some comments, or if you can ask some questions uh, as soon as she finishes her presentation. So I request all of you if you can ask some question and give some feedback to her so that she can develop this paper and idea further and maybe get it published in some respectable journal. So we'll start with Fabia, and Fabia, you will have 20 minutes, and then we'll open the floor, and since we have a very a small group today, so I hope it will be a very lively, interactive discussion among us. And we would just learn something from each other. That's the main purpose of this webinar. So, Tasneem, Fabia Tasneem, please take the floor and present your paper in next 20 minutes, and then we will have interactive discussion after your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I am going to share my screen now. Can you see the screen?
Yes, Apu, please go ahead.
Thank you, Sarah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcoming you again to the third episode of rapid monthly webinar. I am Soeda Fabia Taslim. I have completed my bachelor's and master's in economics from the Department of Economics, University of Dhaka, and I'm currently working as a research officer at Rapid. Within the next 20 minutes, I would like to quickly take you through the motivation, literature review, calculation, and the results of my paper, in which I have tried to explore the relationship between women empowerment and life satisfaction for rural women of Bangladesh. So, the exploration of life satisfaction falls under the broader category of happiness studies, and happiness studies have the potential of informing policy development that takes into account the emotional and spiritual needs of people. So it has a higher possibility of improving the standard of life of people. So because of this potential of happiness studies, UN General Assembly has actually called happiness a fundamental developmental goal in 2011. So, and happiness studies are quite famous in developed countries, but it can also be utilized for developing countries as well. And a good example of that is Bhutan, which is quite well known for its usage of gross national happiness index. So because of these reasons, I think it will be very fruitful for us to explore happiness in the context of Bangladesh. And the reason why I want to see happiness in relation to women empowerment is because Bangladesh was quite lacking in this aspect, and it has come a long way since its birth in this aspect, which is why I would like to explore the relationship between these two. So in my paper, I have tried to explore the current status of women empowerment using the Women Empowerment in Agriculture Index. And then I have also tried to explore the relationship between empowerment and life satisfaction for rural women. And then I have also tried to explore the subcomponents of empowerment that are more or less significant for life satisfaction of rural women. If I look at literature, I haven't found a lot of literature that specifically focuses on empowerment as a whole idea, but there were quite a few literature that has focused on subcomponents of empowerment, such as education, employment status, or income. And those findings have been found to be quite context specific. For example, in case of paid employment, it has been found to be significant for life satisfaction of women from developed world, but it wasn't quite significant for women from other countries of the other regions of the world. And then the same finding goes from income, which says that income is significant for life satisfaction up to a certain limit, after which it really doesn't add much to one's life satisfaction. But it usually has been found to be significant for women, for the life satisfaction of women from developing countries. But other than that, I have found a few literature which has actually solidly concentrated of the relationship between empowerment as a whole idea and life satisfaction. One of those studies has been conducted by Bong Ho and his colleagues in 2005, where they have explored the relationship between personal empowerment and life satisfaction among self-help group members in Hong Kong. And they have found that empowerment to be quite significant for life satisfaction of women. And there was also a paper conducted on the context of Bangladesh, conducted by Asadullah and et al. In 2019, where he has tried to explore the intra-household disparity in empowerment status and the effect of that on life satisfaction of both male and female. And he has found empowerment to be significant for both male and female's life satisfaction. But there are also quite a lot of paper which has focused on the questionable side of empowerment, because while empowerment comes with a lot of rights, it also comes with a lot of responsibilities, which can create two sort of burden for the woman. And the net effect of these two sides is quite hard to pinpoint, which is why many of these findings are very context specific, and which is why I think it is necessary to assess them in the context of Bangladesh separately. So now I would like to move on to the calculation of my dependent variable. So my dependent variable is the life satisfaction score. The measurement that I have used is a self-evaluative measure of life satisfaction. So this is a cognitive measure in which the respondent is asked to look back at their life and rate their overall experience out of a score, out of a range of 1 to 10, in which 1 means very, very unsatisfied and 10 means completely satisfied. So one might question that such self-reported measurements are likely to be very subjected to moods and personal characteristics. So whether or not these are reliable. So there has been a lot of studies, empirical studies, that has proved these measures to be valid and reliable, as they closely follow the findings found in other measurements of life satisfaction. These are quite reliable in a sense. So the life satisfaction score that has been used ranges from a scale of 1 to 10, and ordinality has been assumed among those scales. But there are also studies that has proved that the assumption of ordinality or cardinality really does not affect the results much. So I have categorized the overall score into 3 categories. One being highly unsatisfied. A group of people who belong to a highly unsatisfied have a life satisfaction score of 1 to 4, and then not very unsatisfied belonging to the scores 5 to 7, and very highly satisfied belonging to the scores 8 to 10. And if you look at the sample of the studies, which was 3,729 women from rural Bangladesh, from the Bangladesh Integrated Household Survey, third round of Bangladesh Integrated Household Survey conducted in 2018 and 19. So if you look at the sample, we have found that the mean life satisfaction score of our sample has been found to be 7.66, which means we're working with a fairly satisfied group of people, and about 60% of our sample belongs to the highly satisfied group of people. Again, we are working with a very satisfied group of women. And now moving on to the calculation of my independent variable, primary independent variable, which is a measurement of life satisfaction. In this slide, I have tried to collect the definition of empowerment. My independent variable is the empowerment status according to the Women's Empowerment in Agricultural Index. So the idea of empowerment that closely follows the notion that has been captured in the index that I have used is this, that empowerment is the process that enables individuals to achieve the opportunities that they have been denied beforehand. It is, I think, quite self-explanatory. And this definition that I have explained was given by Dr. Naila Kabir in 2010. And in this slide, I have outlined the process of calculating the empowerment score, but I would like to explain that using this diagram. So in my empowerment index, which is called the Women's Empowerment in Life Satisfaction Index, there are 5 domains of empowerment. That means it assesses empowerment in relation to these 5 domains. These domains being production, resources, access to basis that gives us the measurement of whether or not a woman is empowered in that domain. And each domain is given a score, given a equal weight of 1 by 5, which is then equally redistributed among the indicators of that domain. So there are certain thresholds given in the theoretical papers for having adequacy in one or in any of these indicators. So when a woman achieves adequacy in one indicator, she is given a score of 1, and a score of 0 is assigned otherwise. And after that, the weighted average of all the ones that she has got gives us the overall score in the overall empowerment index. And in this index, overall score of 0.8 has to be achieved in order for this candidate to be considered as empowered. In other words, a woman has to have adequacy in 8 out of the 10 indicators in any combination, or have to have adequacy in 4 out of the 5 domains in any combination in order to be considered as empowered in this index. But I would like to mention one thing, that in the original index, there were 10 indicators, but for this paper, I have only utilized 9 indicators because the access to decision on credit, this indicator under the resource domain, for this indicator, the data was missing for about 75% of our samples. So if we wanted to take that indicator in, our sample size would have been reduced by a significant portion, which is why I have discarded this indicator and then redistributed the weight equally among the remaining 2 indicators. So there will be 9 indicators taken into consideration in this paper. So if we look at the findings of the empowerment index, we have seen that about 81% of our women in the sample are empowered according to this index, and about 20% are disempowered. And so again, we're working with a sample that is mostly empowered. But if we look at the indicator-specific distribution of empowerment, we would see that Bangladeshi women has one of the indicators in which Bangladeshi women have done quite astonishing is the ownership of asset indicator. About 98% of the women have been found to have ownership of asset. So a lot of people might raise a question that how come such a large proportion of women have ownership of agricultural assets? Because in the rural areas, the ownership of agricultural land is mostly in the name of the males. So to understand that, we'll have to take into account the sector-wise distribution of the agricultural households. So here, asset does not, in the index, asset does not only constitute of agricultural land, but it also constitutes of big and small assets such as cows, animals, herds. For example, a cow, if a woman wants a cow, she will be considered, she will be given adequacy in having ownership of agricultural asset. Or if she has 2 goats and a couple of chickens, she will also be given adequacy in the ownership of asset index. So if you look at the specific distribution, area-wise distribution of agricultural subsector, we will see that about 3,400 from the 3,700 something sample that we have used, about 3,400 something of the sample belongs are employed. Sorry, I cannot. I had to resize this. Okay, so about 3,400 of the women considered in the sample are employed. They work with livestock raising and poultry raising. So it makes sense that about 38% of the women have some sort of ownership of cattle or goat or chicken, and so they are adequate in the ownership of asset index. But what is more interesting in terms of finding is the next indicator, which is the control over the purchase, sale, or transfer of the assets. Here we see that only 75% of the women are adequate in this indicator. So if about 98% of the women has ownership of asset, then we would expect a similar percentage of women to have control over those assets. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. There is about a 25% gap, which indicates a problem that perhaps the ownership of asset might be only in paper, but not in practice. This is an area of concern and an interesting finding, in my opinion. And if we look at the indicators in which Bangladeshi women has fared the worst, that would be the leisure indicator in the time dimension, which measures whether or not the woman has enough time for themselves, for their own entertainment and their own personal growth. Only, less than 50% of our sample has adequacy in the leisure indicator, and about less than 50% of our sample, about 48.7% of our women in the sample has adequacy in the speaking in public indicator, which is a sub-indicator under the leadership domain. So what it indicates is that our rural women are probably not very good at voicing their needs or their concerns or having an impact in the community level in terms of leadership capacities, and they are doing quite bad when it comes to having adequate leisure for themselves. So now if we move on to the econometric calculations, given the nature of my dependent variable, I have used ordered logic model, and in the model my dependent variable has been the categories of the 3 categories of life satisfaction in which one candidate might belong, and the primary dependent variable has been the employment status in the WEAI index. And I have also taken into account some demographic factors such as age squared, and marital status and religion, and then some health indicators, health factors such as height, and then presence or absence of chronic diseases, the incidences of illnesses in the past 6 months, and then some socioeconomic factors such as education, income, employment status, and then some household factors such as type of dwelling they live in, number of children aged 5 or less in the household, number of elderly people in the household, and then whether or not they have experienced some sort of economic shock, positive or negative economic shock in their household in the past 6 months. That is the only subjective well-being equation that has been created for Bangladesh. So I have used that from the literature. Now, if we move on to the results, I have found them found empowerment status to be significant for the rural women of Bangladesh. So I think the easiest way to explain the result is that if a woman improves from her status of being disempowered to empowered, her chances of moving up a class of life satisfaction increases. So if we take the odds ratio of this coefficient, it comes around 1.96. So in other words, if a woman becomes empowered from her disempowered state, her chances of moving to a higher life satisfaction group increases by 1.9%. And in this calculation, we have found some other factors to be significant, such as economic shock to the household, education, and then access to electricity, and then monthly non-food expenditure, which has been used as a proxy for income. And then I have also carried out an IV model for the same equation, in which the overall overall participation in community activities for the woman has been used as an IV for the empowerment status. So in the community activities participation, community has been defined at the Upajala level, and the woman for whom the average was being calculated, that woman's participation has been discarded because her participation is supposed to be endogenous for herself. So using that method, we have calculated the average community participation for a woman, and it has been found in the first stage of the IV model, it has been found to be significant, and also in the second stage of the model, it has been found to be significant. So in the IV model of the result also shows empowerment to be significant for life satisfaction of rural women. And then finally, I have carried out individual indicator specific analysis, in which I have used the empowerment status in the separate indicators, and then run the same model multiple times to see which of the specific indicators are significant for life satisfaction of women. Here we have found 4 indicators to be significant, them being having control over asset, group membership, speaking in public, and leisure time. So what is interesting in here is that among these 4 indicators that are significant for life satisfaction of women, leisure time and speaking in public, these were the 2 indicators in which Bangladeshi women has been found to have a really low percentage of Bangladeshi women has been found who are who had adequacy in those 2 indicators. So how we can conclude this is that the sub-indicators that are more important for life satisfaction of women, Bangladeshi women are a really small percentage of Bangladeshi women have adequacy in those indicators that are more important for their life satisfaction. And finally, I have mentioned some of the shortcomings of my studies. The main shortcoming being it is representative of the rural population, so the results cannot be generalized for the women belonging to the urban areas or women belonging to households that are not agricultural in nature. And so there are quite a few scopes of work for further exploration, in which I think individual fixed effects panel data analysis can be carried out to account for the individual specific but time invariant factors of people of the nature of empowerment. And then the effect of empowerment disparity among the household male and female can also be assessed. The effect of empowerment disparity on life satisfaction can be assessed. And of course, as I have mentioned, that I have only found one subjective well-being equation that has been used for Bangladesh. So there is definitely scopes for developing other more robust equations for carrying out such studies for exploring life satisfaction. So here I have included some of my references. So to wrap up, I would say that my study has found that empowerment status to be very significant for the life satisfaction of rural women. And Bangladeshi women, a really small percentage of Bangladeshi women has been found to have the adequacy in the sub-indicators that have been found to be more important for life satisfaction of women. So there are certainly areas in which policymakers should focus on. This is my So here I end my paper. It was a pleasure to present in front of you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fabia. Very interesting paper. And since we know that the month of March is Women History Month, so this is a very perfect timing of talking about women empowerment and life satisfaction. So this is a very interesting work, and I'm sure many participants might have interesting question or feedback for you. But before we take questions from the participants, let me invite our next another speaker for today's webinar, Sheikh Jafar Imran. So he has joined. Actually, in US today was the daylight saving time, so uh, it was 1 hour mismatch between Bangladeshi time and US time. But thank you so much. You joined in time, and we are very fortunate, and we are looking forward to hearing from you what you are doing in your PhD work, and what are the standard academic work we can look forward to. So, Sheikh Jafar Imran, you will have 20 minutes for presentation, and then we'll have open discussion, interactive discussions. We'll have question and comments from the audience and participants. So please take these 20 minutes and share your research. Thank you.
Thank you, Din Islam. So should I start, or the questions of other speaker will be first? I don't know.
No, what we do, we first do the two presentations, then
Okay.
we'll have
Okay, I got it.
questions for each speaker. Yes.
Okay. So can you see my page?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you for inviting me, and let me give a brief introduction of me. So I am Sheikh Jafar Imran, a third-year PhD student at Food and Resource Economics at University of Florida, and I used to work at the University of Dhaka, teach there. I taught there for like more than 10 years, and then left. I'm currently on leave and doing my PhD at UF. So the work I'm going to present today is a theoretical paper. It's like we are developing a theory that like it is compared to a conventional optimal welfare tariff and the like revenue tariff. These are the two concepts that we have been used, and we have developed a new type of tariff, which is the in between the two that I mentioned just now, that what we call a zero welfare revenue tariff. So why we developed this tariff? So a lot of researchers has found that the countries fail to achieve a tariff level, which is zero welfare revenue, which is optimal revenue tariff. So optimal revenue tariff is sometimes very high. For example, countries try to maximize their revenue, and that in order to maximize that revenue, they impose a tariff which is I would say, a lot high than what we expect. But in reality, when they're trying to impose a tariff, there are a lot of other factors to consider. For example, uh, while proposing a tariff, other interest groups, they might lobby to the government that, okay, this tariff is too high, you should like lower that tariff. So therefore, they impose a tariff which is lower than the optimal revenue tariff. On the other hand, optimal welfare tariff, that is a tariff that maximizes the welfare of a country. But it is also a theoretical idea. So that is very difficult to understand by the lot of, I would say, the policymakers and the politicians, because they do not clearly understand what is optimal welfare tariff, what is the level of that. So therefore, there is ambiguity between the idea at what level that should be imposed. So considering this is the context, we develop a new type of tariff that is in between the two. So that means it is lower than the optimal revenue tariff, but higher than the optimal welfare tariff. So it's a bit theoretical paper. It's ongoing work. We have done some the like evidences based on the elasticity and hypothetical surplus values. But however, with the real data, we are trying to calibrate the numbers, whether those exist in reality or not. So that's the background of this paper. So an optimal revenue tariff that is designed by the government in the importing countries to collect revenue by exploiting both exporters and domestic consumers. The government exercises market power, which generates a double distortion. This double distortion comes from the, for example, in case of revenue tariff, we can see there are two types of distortion there, because they have to exploit both marginal revenue and the marginal cost. I mean the marginal outlay curve. So that's why they have to have both monopoly and monopsony power there. Thus, the role of government resembles that of a pure middleman who can distort prices with the imposition of tariff and collects the necessary revenue. This is opposite to the optimal welfare tariff, where the optimal welfare tariff, we can see only one kind of distortion, that is monopoly power. So as I mentioned earlier, that a lot of So, but in reality, governments are only able to impose tariffs that are below the theoretical optimal level, as I found, as I mentioned at the very beginning of my presentation. So, okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, what motivates us to start this work is we know that there is a trade-off between collecting revenue and liberalizing trade. And because when government wants to try to maximize their revenue, they have to tax more goods and services, or they have to, in some extent, they have to liberalize their trade in terms of reducing tariffs and so on. So imperfect market power, the balance between the tariff reduction and maximizing revenue is always theoretically challenging. And some governments can do that, others never be able to do that. So we feel that there is not enough theoretical framework that could explain this trade-off, especially in the context of imperfect market power. So we develop a new tariff that links the welfare with goal of collecting revenue, which we call a zero welfare revenue tariff. So I will clarify that in few minutes. So what is this tariff means and why we call this is like why we call this is the second best solution, not the first best. So I will clarify this in few minutes. And we found that the government gains in the expense of loss of domestic consumers and producer, but it guarantees that welfare is at least equal to the free trade level. That was our benchmark, that welfare should be at least equal to the free trade level. So as we have gone through the literature, we have found that there are a lot of literature related with optimal revenue tariff and the optimal welfare tariff. But as we mentioned, this is a new work, like new type of tariff we are talking about. So therefore, our work is pioneering, and there is not a lot of we didn't find any literature related with that. Even if you can search in the Google, you will find not a single paper related with that, this idea. So therefore, this kind of tariff is new, and our work is the very first of in kind. So objective is that, like a lot of literature found that the government has the objective of generating revenue, safeguarding domestic industries, or acting as negotiation tool rather than aiming for optimal social welfare as found by the Johnson. So the tariff we are talking about is the optimal welfare tariff. That is one of the first kind of tariff proposed by the Johnson, which sometimes called the Johnson tariff. So that developed in 1950s. So later on, the optimal revenue tariff has been introduced, and we have found that none of these are exactly imposed in reality. So the revenue tariff always emphasized revenue collection rather than welfare, as found by Hedy and Mitra, and the welfare function of the government are in fact diverse in nature and inherently embedded with economic and political motives, as told by the Amador and Bagwell 2012. And another literature related with the revenue tariff is that the Tower 1977, which he told that, or he found that the tariff that generate the most government revenue, that is the maximum revenue tariff or optimal revenue tariff, but the higher welfare actually achieved by the optimum tariff that maximize the overall economic welfare of the country. So the model that we are developing is that if there are, we started with the simplistic model that there are two countries like home and foreign countries, and home has a relative price of PH and foreign has a relative price of PF. And this is a quasi-linear utility function, which is a function of only, let's say, one good at the first point. So that is, and at the first case of the initial situation, we assume that the domestic country do not produce the good, they only import it from the foreign countries. And N is a numerary good. That is, that means we have compared the good that we are considering the X in terms of that goods, that good. So this is a very standard procedure to compare your good in terms of a numerary good. So we initially assume that QHPH, that is the supply curve of the home country, and QFPF are the supply curve of the foreign country. And we assume that the QHPH is equals to 0, and the entire domestic demand is imported from the foreign country, as I just mentioned. The inverse demand function of the home country's import is PH X bar smaller than 0. That means negative. It is always true that the inverse demand function of country's import is negative, and inverse supply function of the export for foreign country is positive. Therefore, tax is in fact the difference between the two. And the consumer surplus we're talking about, that is like the utility representation of the supply curve of the home countries given the level of import, that is X bar, and the total, this is the home country's utility, and then that is the like tier X bar is the total revenue collected by the government, and the home countries producer surplus and consumer surplus lost or gain, that is actually considered here. For example, the CS is the consumer surplus, that is the both domestic country and the foreign country. In the first equation, we have like summed all the two, and then the second case, like the producer surplus, we have also summed the both producer surplus of the home and domestic country together with that like total revenue. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, একটু নিচে যাও। ওকে নিয়ে নিচে বসো, আমি নিচ থেকে তাহলে শেষ করে আসি। টিভির ওখানে যাও, আমি টিভি ছাড়ো, ওকে ওকে নিচে বসায় তুমি টিভি ছাড়ো, তারপরে আমি আসতেছি। হ্যাঁ, sorry for a few minutes. And the total revenue is the difference between the country's inverse demand function and the inverse supply function of the export, and like multiplied by the amount of good imported. And we have like shown that the welfare of a country, that is the total of consumer surplus, producer surplus, the sum of the two, that is the SHX bar, and the gamma TRX bar is the total revenue collected by the government. Okay, so like it might be a little bit difficult to follow at the first point, but when I will show in graphs, that you will be understand that very clearly. For example, so if I jump to the graphs, so let's say where is our proposed new type of tariff. For example, optimal welfare tariff, that is actually determined at point E, where the marginal revenue curve intersects the marginal outlay curve at point E, and the price from the optimal revenue tariff is the PB bar. So if you see the PB bar, that is the top in terms of the price axis. So that is the highest or level of price that maximize the total revenue for the government. On the other hand, optimal welfare tariff, that is determined at point F, which is in fact intersection between the marginal outlay curve and the excess demand curve. So that is at point F, and the price level, that is determined at point P0. So the price level that generated from optimal welfare tariff, that is P0. The price level that is determined from the optimal revenue tariff is PB bar. So the idea is that we develop a tariff that is in between the two, because we have found that the researchers said that the PB bar, so PB prime, sorry, PB prime that is too high, and countries fail to achieve this level of price with tariff, and therefore they impose a price that is below the PB prime level. So therefore we are searching for a tariff that is lower than that. When we found that there exists a tariff that is above the optimal welfare tariff price level P0, but lower than PB bar, and that new type of tariff, what we call the zero welfare tariff. So why we call this a zero welfare revenue tariff? Because at this tariff level, we can find that the welfare is in fact equal to the free trade level. Now the question is, what is the free trade level welfare? Free trade level actually determined at point B, where the excess supply curve actually intersects the excess demand curve at point B. So that means the welfare at PW price. So how we measure the welfare at PW price is the sum of the producer surplus, sum of the consumer surplus, and the total revenue collected by the government. So I should mention here that the method at the first theoretical development, we use the classical model. That means we have shown the welfare in terms of the surpluses and the total revenues. That means if you see the Samuelson and other developed in 1970s, how the welfare of the countries actually will be measured. That is the classical method we have been using. But later on, we are trying to estimating in terms of real data, like using the UN Comtrade data for tariff for different countries. And for that one, we are actually measuring welfare in terms of income. If you see the modern literature, like a lot of trade economists shows that the welfare is in fact the country's income, price level, overall standard of living, and a lot of other aspects or other measures. So if you can see our tariff level, our proposed new tariff level, that is
in next 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, is that I already spent so much time? Okay, sorry. So therefore, the zero welfare revenue tariff is the level that is PB double prime. So that is the tariff level we are proposing, and we are saying that the welfare at this PB double prime that is equal to the welfare at PW. So the last one was like in terms of abstract, but this one we tried with the number, and we found that yes, there is a tariff that exists which is below the 206, that is the optimal revenue tariff, and 168, that is the optimal welfare tariff, and our proposed new zero welfare revenue tariff, and the tariff price is 204, that lies below the 206 but above the 168. But welfare is at least equal to the free trade level. That means at price 133, what welfare actually holds at 133. So if we like compare the free trade price and free trade price, optimal welfare tariff price, optimal revenue price with our new zero welfare revenue tariff price, and we have compared all the surpluses, and we see what happened to the world welfare in terms of total surpluses. And we found that the zero welfare revenue tariff we are proposing that actually generates the welfare that is almost equal to the free trade level price, that is 10,878. That is the free trade level of welfare. and zero welfare revenue tariff, and that generates the welfare equal to 10,640. So someone might ask why that is not exactly equal, because of the elasticity of the points is different. As we know, in the it is the graph I have shown, that is a straight line and linear line, and in the linear demand curve at every point, the elasticity is different. So therefore, at the point where it is actually intersecting, so that generates the zero welfare revenue tariff, generates the welfare that is 10,640, which is a little lower than the free trade price, but it can be possible with the trial and error method. We can approach to the free trade level welfare, and that's our idea. So we have also shown what type of, let's say, gain and loss actually compared to all situation, and because of the graph we showed, there is deadweight loss and related with that. So that is called the Harburger triangle. So Harburger triangle is different in each cases. So therefore, we found that the maximum gain actually under the free trade, but our proposed zero welfare revenue tariff, that actually generates loss. That is 4,044. If you can see, this is lower than the optimal revenue tariff that is the government actually trying to impose in order to maximize the revenue. So therefore, our tariff generates a loss which is less than the loss under the optimal revenue tariff. And this is a little bit complicated graph compared to the, because we in the first situation we have no import that actually come from the foreign countries. But here we assume, yes, domestic country has also have the production. Therefore, we added the extra domestic supply curve. Instead, in the last graph, there was no domestic supply curve. Well, as there is total supply curve is sum of the domestic supply and the import. Therefore, it becomes a little bit complicated, and we have to compare all the boxes, I mean the triangles or rectangles together to show that, yes, the area of this, for example, with our new proposed PR0, that is the zero welfare revenue tariff, that actually generates the surplus that equal to the free trade level, but that means all the boxes sum together are plus or minus depending on whether the producer surplus increase or decrease, or total revenue of the government increase or decrease, in summation, increase or equal to the level of the welfare that we are proposing. So that's so I will not be able to explain all these sections in detail, but if you are interested, I can explain it a bit more after the presentation. Let me conclude with this. And as I said, it is ongoing work. More empirical evidences will be generated in a few months, I presume, as we are working on the data now and trying to calibrate the numbers, real data real tariff data, and trying to see whether that type of tariff actually exists in reality or not. And so I will wrap up my discussion with that despite the contrasting theoretical concept, the monopoly of monopsony, government as a key player in international trade can play the dual role by imposing the optimal revenue tariff, as we mentioned earlier. So the revenue tariff, in contrast, is a welfare optimal welfare tariff, also generates revenue with higher welfare losses. Therefore, our idea is that the revenue tariff is characterized as elevated because it is too high and connoted as welfare depressing compared to an optimal welfare tariff. Thus, the optimal welfare tariff is welfare enhancing compared to the optimal revenue tariff. And we introduce a new type of theory of what we call the zero welfare revenue tariff, which aiming to achieve welfare equivalent to the free trade. And we have used the excess demand and excess supply framework to demonstrate that our idea. And the distribution, we found that distribution under the zero welfare revenue tariff is entirely different than the free trade level. And our analysis revealed that the government gains in the expense of reduction of consumer and producer surplus. However, it ensures the welfare is equal to the free trade level. And then that's it from my side as a presentation. If you have any question, I like to welcome anyone. Any feedback, any queries, concern? So you are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jafar Imran Bhai. So we have concluded 2 presentations. Now it would be a good opportunity for all of you. If you have any question or feedback, or if you are interested doing something similar, you can also have some feedback on your own work if you'd like. So I would now like to request anyone, if you have question, you can just raise your hand, and depending on how many people we have, then we can allow serially people to ask questions. Yes, Samia, please.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, my question is to Fabiha Tasnim. The paper on relationship between women empowerment and life satisfaction. So in this paper, to understand the level of satisfaction, you have asked one question and the response was self-reported. Well, my observation is that instead of asking one question, if we could ask a series of questions, it would give us a more complete picture. So my question to you is that, do you think relying on one question provided an accurate estimation? If yes, then how? If you kindly elaborate it a bit.
Thank you, Samia. Interesting question, and I hope Fabia is taking note. We'll take all the questions together, then we'll go back to the speakers. Okay, next, Saiful Islam. Please mention the speaker you'd like to ask the question, and please unmute yourself and ask the question. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, sir, for giving me the opportunity. I like to thank you, Imran sir, for giving us a very novel approach to share with us. And I like to mention a queries or question of my interest, which is that zero welfare revenue tariff seems to a present novel approach to tariff imposition by balancing welfare with revenue generation. But how does this novel add up to fluctuation in global market commodity price, such as change in supply chain disruption, significant change in exchange rate, and the rivals country retaliate in their tariff changes? So how can we adapt in the long term when we adapt this type of tariff imposition? Thank you for that answer.
Thank you very much, Saiful. Very interesting question. I hope you'll have some response from Imran Bhai. Next, I would like to request Asaf Ibn Salim, if you can unmute yourself and
Yes, sir.
ask your question.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, sir, for giving me the floor. First of all, props to both to the presenters for such wonderful topics and interesting presentations. So my question is to Fabiha. So I think you mentioned in the presentation there were 5 different domains of women empowerment. So let's say that the government or an NGO for that matter has resources or budget to address, actively intervene in one of those domains. So based on your literature review and your findings, which domain would you recommend so to receive the utmost priority that will have the most effective solutions to this matter. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Asaf, for another interesting question. The next participant, Sumaya. Sumaya, please unmute yourself and ask a question.
Thank you, sir. I have two questions. One is for Sir Sheikh Imran and one is for Fabiha. My first question is to Sheikh Imran, sir. In economics, we all know that the optimal terms refers a balanced situation. Do you think that zero welfare revenue tariff would be better than the optimal tariff revenue during any kind of economic shock situation? And my second question is to Fabiha. Fabiha mentioned that the control over use of income is more than 99%. But when my experience says that I worked with RNG women workers and the scenario was opposite. My question is, how did you measure the control over use of income? What was the indicator to measure this? Thank you.
Excellent question, Sumaya. Thank you so much. I have some observation, but let me see whether anyone else has any question or any comment or any feedback. Anyone else? Anything you'd like to share with our presenters, with our speakers today? Okay, excellent. Thank you. Let me just go back to the speakers to hear their responses and their thoughts. So let me start with Sheikh Jafar Imran Bhai. Please, if you respond, I guess there are two questions to you.
Yeah, I got it. So the first one is from Saiful. I would like to thank him to bring that attention. His question is, as I understand it correctly, is that you would like to see whether this type of tariff, how that actually interact with the price fluctuation, and he also talked about the retaliation of the countries, because when one country imposes tariff, other country also imposes tariff. The tariff war is a common thing. Like in recent years, US and China has a very big tariff war between them. So yes, that was our point, is that yes, countries retaliate when one country imposes the tariff. Therefore, they have to change the level of the tariff. So, for example, if they have something in mind, so there are a lot of literature which is called the retaliatory tariff, and how the price is determined. But our idea is that yes, due to the pressure group or the interest groups pressure to the government and the tariff war retaliation, due to that, the countries fail to achieve the price level which is generated from the optimal revenue level. Therefore, they impose at the price level lower, not higher than that. So if the price level goes beyond the optimal revenue tariff, that means price is even higher. For example, if I go back to my presentation, so what the Saiful actually trying to mention is that if the countries impose, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So if the price level or countries retaliate or countries engage in a tariff war, their price level will be even higher than that, because even higher that is impossible. Why that is impossible? Because this PB bar, that is that is the price with the optimal revenue tariff, and that is imposed by the government with the intention that they want to maximize their revenue. They will never be able to maximize the revenue if they increase the tariff level even higher than that, because of the the demand curve is downward sloping. So excess demand curve is also downward sloping. if they increase the tariff level beyond that, the total quantity consumption or demanded or imported by the other countries will be very low. For example, 25% tariff level imposed by the US during the US-China tariff war, that actually discouraged the US like producer or importers to import from the China. So that is a discouraging level of tariff. If they go beyond that, sometimes that is called the prohibitive tariff, that is even higher. So therefore, as we see that those momentarily can fluctuate the price, but that will not help the government to achieve their goals. I mean the achieve the revenue level. So that they will never be able to do that, because the optimal revenue tariff is the tariff level that maximize the revenue. If they increase more than that, because if you see the relation between if you see in the standard textbook, the relationship between the revenue and the tariff level, it is like it's a concave curve. And at the some tariff level, welfare actually maximizes, but later on it actually decreases. So therefore, if you go beyond the optimal welfare tariff level due to retaliatory action or any other imperfect distortions, that will never be help governments to achieve the revenue level higher than that. And the price will of course fluctuates, as we have seen in the real data. After the US-China tariff war, we have seen that the price level actually jumped to certain levels, but in the long run, countries trying to find another source, like they're trying to substitute, may not from the domestically, but from other countries to import those goods where it is relatively cheaper. If when we are assuming there are substitutes available in the world. That is my first response to the Saiful, and I didn't know whether I answered your question or not. So, Saiful, did you?
Sir, I understood clearly. Thank you, sir.
Okay. On the other hand, Sumaya had a question, is that as we say the optimal as the tariff levels is tagged as the optimal welfare tariff or zero welfare tariff, like that, whether those are optimal or like that. But can you repeat your question again so that
Yes, sir.
I can? Yeah.
My question was, zero welfare revenue tariff would be better than optimal tariff revenue during any kind of economic shock. What do you think?
Well, it is hard to tell because we don't know what is the nature of the shock, what type of shock you are talking about. So, for example, if it is demand-driven shock, then if you impose tariff even higher than that, that never going to work, because that will increase the price level further, and the demand will be even reduced even further. So it's depend on the nature of the shock. If it's supply-driven shock, for example, then still supply shocks come from the increasing cost. So if you increase the tariff more as compared to the zero welfare optimal level, zero welfare revenue tariff we proposed even higher than the optimal welfare tariff level, so it is higher. So if you increase the tax or tariff further, it's never going to help to correct the supply measures when it is supply driven shocks like that. So still there is a lot of ambiguity in understanding the nature of shocks or related to that. So
thank you, sir.
Thank you, Imran Bhai. Then let us quickly move to our another presenter, Fabia, if you quickly respond to the questions.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I have only been able to hear the questions of Asaf Bhai and Sumaya Apu. Was there anyone else who asked a question to me?
No, I don't think so. So
Okay.
we have.
So-
Bosha. Bosha.
Should I repeat it?
Yes, it would be nice if you can repeat it.
I asked that you have asked one question regarding the satisfaction level. It was a dependent variable. So I thought that instead of one question, if we could ask a series of questions, then it would probably capture the complete picture. So I just wanted to know your opinion on this. If you think that one question gave you the accurate estimation, why so? If you could kindly elaborate this.
Okay, thank you, Apu. I would like to answer Bosha Apu's question first. So the reason why I used only one question is because I have used secondary source of data, so I had to do with whatever is available. But that indicator, that measurement that I have used, past literature has showed that they closely follow the other measurements of life satisfaction, which are not self-reported. So I think they can be called reliable and valid. And regarding why I didn't use a series of questions on different aspects of life, I haven't found any such measurement in the literature, and I think there are too many aspects to take into account if we want to measure life satisfaction sector-wise. So I think that will be a very cumbersome process, and I do not think as a young professional I am capable of designing something like that yet. And now I would like to answer Asaf Bhai's question. So you have asked what domain I would prioritize for intervention based on my literature and my personal findings. So since I have my focus was on life satisfaction, so I would try to invest in the domain that would have an immediate effect and will be able to improve the standard of living of the people immediately. So in this regard, I would choose the time domain so that women have less workforces in their daily lives and have more time for taking care of themselves. And the validation from literature will be that there are studies that suggest that if a woman is too exhausted or too worked up, it doesn't only affect her own life satisfaction, but it can also have an effect on the other members of the household, such as the children or the elderly people, because in Bangladesh, the women carry out the role of the primary caretakers of everyone else in the households. So I would like to focus on the time dimension from the 5 domains. And to answer Sumaya Apu's question, I would first like to identify that you have mentioned the cases of garments worker. But my sample was for the rural women belonging to the agricultural household. So this might be one reason why there is such a big gap in terms of uses of income, control over income, that my findings cannot be generalized for the women belonging to manufacturing sector or the urban women. Other than that, I think another way of explaining this, the reason why I have such high percentage of adequacy for women in control of over income is that the threshold was said to be quite low. In the index that I have used, the way adequacy in control over income has been measured is that there were a few categories in which women has to be able to spend their income on their own without having to take permission from their husband or other members of their family. So there was a category for making large purchases, whether or not they can make large expenditures using their own income. And there were a few categories for small purchases, such as buying sweets for their own children, or buying hair oil for their own selves, or buying food items for their family. So these are considered to be the small purchases. So if a woman could have adequacy in the large percentage, she would be considered empowered in that index. Or if a woman could have adequacy in 2 or more of the small purchases, she will also be considered to have adequacy in the control over income index. So I think most of the women had achieved adequacy through the control over the purchase of small purchases channel, I think which isn't really unrealistic, because most women in the rural areas are probably have the control of buying sweets for their own children, or a hairpin, or hair oil for their own selves, or rice for their family. I think I have been able to answer your questions, Maya. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, Fabia. And thank you so much, all of you, for being with us. So one thing is important that we, as an economist or other social scientists, we actually spend a lot of time on our research, but equally important is to communicate our research to others so that that research can be validated, that research can be implemented and can have real life impact. So this platform actually is created to provide this opportunity for young researchers. So the skill of presentation and communication actually takes time to grow. So I would like to invite all of you, if you have your paper or if you have some work in progress, your own paper or your co-author paper, and if you like to share, to communicate with others and to build some network with others, please connect with us. We would facilitate you in our future webinar. And I would like to thank our today's presenter, Sheikh Jafar Imran Bhai. Thank you so much. It's bit early in the morning in the US, and you joined us and gave the presentation. The paper was very interesting. It's a bit theoretical. It's difficult to understand, but I guess many of us have learned many things from your presentation. And many thanks to Fabia. Your topic seems interesting and has very good potential. So I hope you keep working on this. So I would like to thank everyone. Have a good night, and I hope to see you again in our next month's webinar. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you, Dean. See you. Bye.